Switzerland, a land of precision watches, chocolate, and pristine banks. A country that prides itself on order, on cleanliness, on history written in ledgers and laws. But long before the first Swiss franc was minted, long before the first Roman soldier marched over the Alps, long before anyone thought to give this land a name, there were hunters here. They came 150,000 years ago. Not Homo sapiens, not us. They were our cousins, our predecessors, our shadow selves, the Neanderthals. This is their story. And in a way, it is our story too. The Pleistocene epoch, a time of giants and ice, a time when the very shape of the continent was rewritten again and again by forces beyond human comprehension. To understand Switzerland's first people, we must first understand the world that shaped them. A world that cycled through 20 major glacial and interglacial periods, each one lasting thousands of years, each one transforming the land beyond recognition. The Paleolithic period spans from the first human arrival in the Rhine and Rhone basins, likely before 1.5 million years ago, until approximately 12,000 years before the present. But it is the Middle Paleolithic, roughly 300,000 to 35,000 years ago, that marks the first well-attested period of human occupation in what would become Switzerland. Each time the ice advanced, it scraped the land clean, destroying most traces of those who came before. This is why early human remains in Switzerland are so fragmentary, so precious. The glaciers were not just climate, they were erasers, wiping the slate clean again and again. And yet remarkably, they persisted. When the ice retreated, they returned. Generation after generation, millennium after millennium, they came back to these valleys, these mountains, these caves. They did not know they were the first, they only knew this was home. Scientists have reconstructed these climate cycles with remarkable precision. They call them marine isotope stages, numbered periods of cold and warmth that correspond to the advance and retreat of glaciers across the northern hemisphere. When the ice advanced, the Neanderthals retreated to refuges, southern valleys, protected basins, places where life could cling on. When the ice retreated, they expanded again, following the game, following the warmth, following the sun. This was not a static existence, this was a dance with the planet itself, choreographed over tens of thousands of years. The Neanderthals did not fight the ice. They did not try to change it, they listened to it, they moved with it, they survived. These were Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. For more than a century after their discovery, we imagined them as brutish cavemen, hunched and simple, dragging their knuckles through a world they could not understand. We were wrong. Modern science has revealed a different picture. Neanderthals had brains slightly larger than ours on average. They cared for their injured and elderly. Skeletons have been found with healed fractures, missing limbs, conditions that would have required years of support. They buried their dead with care, perhaps with ritual. They made tools of extraordinary sophistication. They were skilled hunters, capable of killing animals far larger than themselves. Mammoths, rhinoceroses, cave bears. They lived in small, mobile groups, following game through the seasons, returning to favored sites year after year, generation after generation. They chose their homes carefully, not just any cave would do. They needed dominant positions for observing game, access to water, proximity to raw materials for tool-making, and perhaps most importantly, shelter from the relentless Pleistocene climate. They knew this landscape. They knew it better than we ever will. Every valley, every ridge, every source of flint and water, all mapped in minds that left no maps behind. In the Arius Canyon of Canton Neuchâtel, at 660 meters above sea level, a cave entrance opens on a cliff face. Today, it is a peaceful hiking destination, a place where families pause for photographs and children imagine ancient mysteries. But 70,000 years ago, this was home. Cotencher cave is one of the oldest Paleolithic sites in Switzerland, known for its rich faunal remains and Mousterian artifacts. The tool culture of the Neanderthals. Discovered over a century ago, it remains the major site of Swiss Mousterian culture. Excavations here revealed something remarkable. Over 400 stone artifacts. Tools carefully crafted using a sophisticated technique called l'évaloir, a method that allowed Neanderthals to predetermine the shape of flakes struck from a stone core, producing lighter, more rapidly manufactured tools. Imagine the skill. A single carefully prepared stone core could yield multiple sharp-edged tools with minimal waste. This was not crude banging of rocks. This was precision engineering, a technology so effective that it persisted for over 200,000 years across continents and climates. The lithic artifacts at Cotencher indicate that tool production occurred at the site. Neanderthals sat right here at this cave entrance, making weapons to hunt the animals that shared their world. Their waste flakes litter the floor. Their unfinished tools lie where they were abandoned. This was a workshop, a home, a sanctuary. But the Neanderthals ranged far beyond the Jura. At the foot of Mount Rigi in central Switzerland, another cave holds a secret, Steigelfadbalm cave. Excavated between 1913 and 1937 by Wilhelm Amrein, it yielded a small archaeological sensation. The first stone artifacts in central Switzerland definitively proven to be Neanderthal work. The most important find, a small stone with a sharp tip made from pure quartz. A triangular point, worked on both sides, characteristic of the Middle Paleolithic period. What makes this extraordinary is the material. This quartz does not occur locally. The Neanderthals who sheltered here carried it from somewhere else, perhaps from the Uri Alps, over 50 kilometers away. They knew their landscape intimately. They knew where to find quality stone, and they were willing to travel for it. These were not creatures confined to valleys. They were mountaineers, crossing high passes, navigating treacherous terrain. Switzerland's relationship with its mountains began not with climbers or tourists, but with hunters seeking stone. But perhaps the most surprising Neanderthal sites lie even higher. In the early 20th century, Emil Bächler made discoveries that challenged everything archaeologists thought about early humans. At Wildkirchli cave, at nearly 1,500 meters elevation, evidence of Neanderthal presence emerged. Then, at Wildenmannlisloch at 1,628 meters, and at Drachenloch at a staggering 2,445 meters, far above any permanent habitation, far above any reasonable expectation of human activity. For decades, scientists assumed the high Alps were colonized very late, perhaps not until the Holocene after the ice finally retreated. But these caves proved otherwise. Neanderthals were venturing into the high country, following game, seeking shelter, surviving where few would think to go. Life at these altitudes was brutal. Intense frost action shattered the cave sediments. Artifacts were deformed by natural pressures. The toolkits are impoverished, typically just flakes from local quartzites, not the fine flint of lowland sites. But they came anyway, seasonally perhaps, but repeatedly. These high-altitude sites share one thing, the remains of cave bears, and that shared presence, human and bear sharing the same mountains, the same caves, the same world, would become one of the most debated mysteries in alpine archaeology. The cave bear, Ursus spelaeus, an animal so massive, so powerful that sharing a mountain with it seems unthinkable, and yet for thousands of years, Neanderthals did exactly that. At Steigelfadbalm cave alone, excavations unearthed over 3,000 bones and bone fragments. 90% were from cave bears. These were not the bears we know today. A large cave bear reached 3.5 meters in length, stood 1 3/4 meters at the shoulder, and weighed up to 1,500 kilograms, the weight of a small car. The relationship between Neanderthals and cave bears has fascinated and divided archaeologists for a century. Emil Bächler, after his excavations at Drachenloch, developed elaborate theories about bear cults and hunting rituals. He imagined Neanderthals killing bears in religious ceremonies, arranging their skulls in stone chests, worshipping the animal they feared. Bächler was a brilliant excavator, but he saw what he wanted to see: the evidence for bear cults, the arrangement of skulls, the stone structures, has not held up to modern scrutiny. These high-altitude caves were primarily bear refuges, not human shrines. The bears hibernated there. The humans visited when the bears were gone. Modern analysis reveals a more complex story. At Cotencher, while lithic artifacts indicate tool production, the faunal remains show no direct evidence of human hunting or butchery. The bones and tools ended up together not because Neanderthals killed bears there, but because natural processes mixed them over millennia. Solifluction, the slow flow of water-saturated soil over frozen ground. It displaced artifacts and bones, rearranging them in ways that misled early excavators. The evidence was not lying, it had simply moved. The bears and the humans shared these mountains. They may have competed for caves, They may have avoided each other, they may have occasionally fought, but they did not worship, they did not ritualize, they simply coexisted. Two species, both powerful, both intelligent, both trying to survive in a world that did not make survival easy. Despite the interpretive challenges, the artifacts themselves tell a clear story. Neanderthals in Switzerland were master toolmakers. The Mousterian industry, named after the site of Le Moustier in France, dominates Swiss Middle Paleolithic sites. These tools are characterized by the predominant use of flakes as tool blanks, shaped into scrapers, points, and knives. They are not random. They are standardized, repeated, refined over millennia. When modern flint knappers replicate these tools and use them, we understand their genius. A well-made Neanderthal scraper can clean a hide in minutes. A Levallois point hafted to a wooden shaft can penetrate the hide of a reindeer from 20 meters. At Cotencher, the lithic assemblage includes tools of the Mousterian Charentian type, specifically the Oriental Quina variety. These are distinctive, thick scrapers with scaled retouch, designed for heavy-duty work. The Quina type is special. It suggests particular activities, perhaps intensive hide working or woodworking. And the fact that we find it at Cotencher tells us something about how these Neanderthals connected with their neighbors. Similar tools appear in eastern France, in the Jura, and in the Alpine foothills. These were not isolated bands. They were part of a larger cultural world. To understand why Neanderthals chose certain sites, we must reconstruct the world they inhabited. It was nothing like Switzerland today. At Cotencher, the rich faunal assemblage reveals an astonishing association of animals that could not coexist in any modern environment. Reindeer and ibex, marmot and mammoth, species of frozen steppe alongside creatures of temperate forest. This mix tells us something crucial. The Pleistocene landscape was a mosaic. Patches of tundra, pockets of forest, alpine meadows, icy ridges, all within walking distance. Neanderthals did not live in a uniform ice age. They lived in a patchwork of micro-environments, each with different resources. Recent interdisciplinary studies have transformed our understanding of these ancient environments. By analyzing sediments, pollen, and microscopic remains, scientists have reconstructed the dramatic climate swings that Neanderthals endured. At Cotencher, evidence shows the presence of a local glacier around 70,000 years ago, followed by ice-free conditions with alternating soil formation and landscape destabilization. The Neanderthals who sheltered at Cotencher witnessed glaciers advance and retreat. They lived through periods of frozen ground, when even summer did not fully thaw the soil. They returned to sites repeatedly over thousands of years, a testament to their deep knowledge of this landscape. Today, archaeologists have documented only about 20 Middle Paleolithic sites in Switzerland, open-air stations, rock shelters, and caves. This scarcity is not because Neanderthals were rare, it is because glaciers scraped the land clean, erasing most evidence of their presence. The sites that remain fall into three main groups: open-air stations in the northwest, particularly the Basel region, cave and rock shelter habitats in the Jura, and the high-elevation alpine caves. The Lovenburg site, at 570 meters elevation on a spur dominating the Lucelle Valley, represents something special. Here, on a small south-facing plateau, Neanderthals established fairly durable habitats, at least during favorable seasons. The combination of high-quality flint outcrops, water sources, game, and favorable topography made this an ideal location. Neanderthals recognized good real estate when they saw it. In the Basel region, open-air sites sit on the edges of middle and high Rhine terraces at 300 to 350 meters elevation. These represent brief hunter stops, perhaps overnight camps during seasonal movements, particularly at tributary valley mouths where game would concentrate. Each site tells a different story. Some were homes, occupied for weeks or months. Others were way stations, used for a night or two. The Neanderthals moved through their landscape with purpose, with knowledge, with intention. But the Neanderthals' time in Switzerland was limited. Around 36,000 years ago, conditions worsened dramatically. At Cotencher, evidence reveals local glacier development around 36,000 years ago. This was not the massive alpine ice sheet of the last glacial maximum. That would come later, around 22,000 to 18,000 years ago. But it was enough to make life in the Jura and Alps impossible. The recognition and dating of recurrent hostile glacier landscapes helps explain a mystery: the gap in human occupation between the Middle and Upper Paleolithic. When glaciers advanced, people left. When they returned, the archaeological record resumes, but with different faces. By 35,000 years ago, the Neanderthals were gone from Switzerland, not just from here, from everywhere. Their cousins, Homo sapiens, our ancestors, were spreading across Europe. The two groups may have met, may have mixed, may have exchanged knowledge and genes. But the Neanderthals' time was ending. They left behind their tools, their bones, their caves. They left behind the evidence of their lives, but they did not leave behind their story. That we must piece together ourselves. What did these first Swiss leave behind? A few thousand stone tools, scattered bones, charcoal from ancient fires, and questions that still haunt us. At Steigelfadbalm cave today, an information board tells visitors what was found here, but the cave itself is empty, just rock and silence. The bones of 3,000 cave bears rest in museum collections, studied by scientists, visited by school children. The quartz point from the Uri Alps sits behind glass, a reminder of the people who carried it so far. But research continues. At Cotencher, new excavations using modern methods are extracting stories that earlier archaeologists could not access. Luminescence dating, micromorphology, geochemistry. We are not just looking for more artifacts. We are reconstructing entire landscapes. We can now date the sediments themselves, not just the bones. We can understand how the cave formed, how it changed when the bears were there, when the humans came. Every grain of sand has a story. After 150,000 years, we are finally beginning to see these first Swiss as they really were. Not brutes, not simple cavemen, but people. They buried their dead with care. They tended the injured and elderly. They passed knowledge across generations. They looked out at the same mountains we see today. Mount Rigi, the Sentis, the Jura peaks, and they called them home. A Neanderthal who lived 70,000 years ago at Cotencher knew the valley below intimately, knew where to find flint, where the game would be in spring, which caves faced south for winter warmth. This knowledge was accumulated over centuries, passed down in stories, demonstrated in actions. When we find a single artifact, we are not just finding a tool. We are finding the residue of a mind that understood this landscape far better than most of us do today. They did not have writing, they did not have cities, they did not have what we call civilization, but they had something else, a connection to this land so deep, so intimate that we can barely comprehend it. Next time you drive through the Arius Canyon or hike on Mount Rigi or ski in the Sentis region, look up at the cliffs. Somewhere up there, 150,000 years ago, someone was watching. Someone who knew this land before it had a name, before it was Switzerland. Someone who called these mountains home. They left us no written records, no cities, no monuments, only stone and bone scattered across the mountains. But they left us something else too. A 150,000-year legacy of human resilience, adaptability, and survival in the most beautiful, most challenging landscape on Earth. The first Swiss were not bankers, watchmakers, or chocolatiers. They were hunters. They were survivors. They were people who looked at these mountains and saw not a barrier, but a home. And in a way, they are still here, in the caves, in the stone, in the mountains themselves, waiting for us to remember. History begins with writing, but humanity begins long before. In the next episode of this series, we travel forward in time, from the Ice Age hunters to the Iron Age warriors, from stone to metal, from anonymity to history, the Celts, the Helvetii, Switzerland's first-named tribe. Who were they? Where did they come from? And what happened to their lost civilization? They were farmers, they were warriors, they were traders who connected the Alps to the Mediterranean. They minted coins, built fortified settlements, and faced the might of Rome itself. In 58 BC, they tried to migrate. All 300,000 of them. Caesar stopped them at Bibracte, and history changed forever. Their story is one of the greatest untold epics of European history. And next time, we will tell it. From the hunters of the Ice Age to the warriors of the Iron Age, the story of Switzerland is only beginning.